Hello there! We have got some really juicy stuff in the latest 42.11 update, and as with most of the patch notes of late, we've got a lot to cover. So today we will go through all that you need to know about the patch notes without taking too much time. But if you do want to read the patch notes in depth, there will be a link in the description below. So without further ado, let us begin. Let's start with what's new in this update. To kick things off, the devs added a new craft logic UI to the context menu. This may have broken a few mods in the process, so just wait for those to be updated if one of your favorite mods are broken. They also threw in some context menu display icons for add padding and patch hole in the clothing UI. This update also came with a few CPU and memory usage optimizations, which is what I want to see. Although I do wish they would sort out the absolute ass stuttering that happens when you are driving and also when you load a new chunk, but we will get there eventually as things progress along. No longer shall we have to sit there and use the inventory menu to scroll between the fridge and the freezer like us in real life at 2 AM hoping for food to magically appear. Oh no, they have now added the ability to cycle between these by simply clicking on either the top half or the bottom half of a 2-container object, like a fridge for example.
I love refrigerators.
It's a small quality of life feature that will save you more time than you think, especially on big looting runs. Okay, this is a big one, especially when you're engaged in multiple activities that need the building menu. They've now added the ability for us to bind a hotkey to toggle it. Oh my goodness, this is glorious. Currently, the hotkey is unassigned though, so don't forget to bind it to a key of your choosing. This will tie in nicely with the fact that we can now use either Shift, Control, or Alt as a modifier to any of our key bindings, but it will be limited to only one of those modifiers at a time. This means we can open up an entirely new set of key bindings if that is something that you would like to do, because the less clicking, the better. Am I right? With the new update comes some really nice functionality improvements for the in-game map. Firstly, for the mini-map, which honestly I forgot exists because I always play without it, we now get 2 extra levels for zooming, which I guess is nice for players who like using it. Zoom options aside, these next changes are really nice. Recently, I discovered that I wasn't using my map to its fullest potential with all the markings and whatnot. So in my most recent playthrough, I decided that I was going to do just that. And it seems as though IndieStone heard my prayers and gave us a whole lot of options to customize the text on our maps. They added in a new style layer, simply called text, which is used to define the font and the color of the built-in, or the baked-in, as they call it, map annotations, instead of just applying these values separately to everything. Within that text style layer, there are multiple sublayers that we can control. So how does all of this affect us exactly? Essentially, we can now resize and rotate our map icons and, wait for it, configure them to stick to the surface of the map depending on whether or not you prefer the orthographic view, which is from the top, or the isometric perspective, which is the one that we are all used to playing with. Another cool feature is the fact that we can now duplicate our map markings while using the Move Marking tool by holding Shift and dragging them, and even edit them instead of just removing them first and having to redo them. I reckon these new text layer changes mean that modders will have more avenues of creating their maps, which will allow for snazzy things like this. We also have support for multi-line text annotations, although I tried my best to look around to see if we could actually do this in-game, but it seems like we are still on one line at the moment. Maybe this is something that the modders could use, or the full support for it will come in the future, which we will have to see. Oh, also you'll notice that Louisville has actual street names now, which is great. The map also has received some optimization to the rendering of image pyramids, which is fancy speak for the map will perform better in general. Alrighty, let's move on to some of the non-map changes and how they may affect us. Some coding wizardry was done to tidy up and consolidate code that is used to handle things like fireplaces, barbecues, and general fire interaction tiles, in prep for future implementations. A lot of new context menu icons were added to various mechanics in the game. As time goes on, I suspect that everything will eventually have one where it's relevant. For my ranchers out there who love to live out their Stardew Valley fantasies, now if you've given your animals a custom name, it will now show up above the animal when you've highlighted their designated zone. To make things a little easier, the zone will now be highlighted when using the Check Zone context menu option. They also made it so that the animal submenu options display the animal icon and highlight the animal when said option is highlighted. It's a little small quality of life feature that will make your life a hell of a lot easier when trying to navigate an entire pen of chickens or worse. But that covers the bulk of new additions to animals, so let's move on to some of the more miscellaneous new additions. I had to start a whole new save without my beloved Neat Building UI for this. By the way, I cannot express how much I love this mod, so thank you so much, Rocco, you legend. They added in automatic orientation detection for the build menu. I spent way more time than I should have trying to figure out what exactly that meant in game. But from what I can see, it may have to do with how the actual window behaves in relation to how you scale it. Because, and I don't know if this was this way before, we can now do this. Ooh. The Transfer Fluids UI now closes when we move an item from our inventory or from the world. And also, for my pyromaniacs out there, Molotovs no longer require a second fluid container to craft. On a side note, some other cool things we can do with fluids now are being able to put lids on the amphora and round rain barrels, and even better, create a hot drink using metal cups or a lonely tumbler glass. This can be done from both your inventory and in a coffee machine. Oh yeah, I feel this next one is going to be a real nice one for a lot of you, because I know most of you like to collect some serious drip in the apocalypse. We can now use mannequins to manage all of our different outfit sets. You can even use them to completely swap out an entire outfit with the one on the mannequin, or you can add it on top of what your character is currently wearing. You can find where to do this via buttons in the mannequin UI, as you can see here. Finally, we can take bricks or gold bars from the random pallets we find around the world. This is huge, so now we don't have to forage around for bricks, or worse, make them ourselves. Ugh. I'm not gonna spoil where you can find the gold though. It's a secret. Alrighty, let's go over some of the changes to recipe browsing, because I know all of you are dying to use more of that delicious vanilla context menu. First things first, we can now right click on an inventory item to see which recipes that item is used in, assuming we know the relevant recipes, which will then automatically open the crafting UI with that item set as the required filter. Nice little time saver there. Following on from that, we can now do something similar with magazines or schematics that give us recipes. We can now right click on said magazines and use the show recipes option, which will show us exactly what that magazine will give us. If you click on that recipe, it'll take you directly to the crafting UI. Recipe names that we have favorited will now show up as the player-defined good color, which is by default green. Green good, red bad. This next addition to the crafting menu is a small but a beneficial time saver. Any recipe that needs a specialized workstation to craft will now show more clearly than before, so it saves you a few extra clicks. Moving on to all those random packets of seeds and magazines that give you info regarding various crop growing seasons. If you click on any of the growing seasons in the Discovered Recipes tab, it will take you directly to the Growing Seasons tab. But it won't take you to the correct one just yet. If you are as lost as I was and where the hell to find this window, you can actually find it right here. With the growth season magazines themselves, we can do something similar by right-clicking on them and using the new See Recipes option, click on any of them to navigate directly to the Growing Seasons menu. Again, this won't take you directly to the growing season of the crop that you clicked on, but it does provide a shortcut for us to get to the growing seasons menu. And with how the context menu is starting to turn out, I am all for shortcuts. Magnesium shavings can now be used as tinder to start various fires, and the magnesium fire starter can be used to ignite various types of tinder as well. They also fixed the recipe for making said shavings from a magnesium fire starter. I have never even seen this thing in game yet, so yet another thing to add to the Loot Goblin shopping list. Tools in equipped and or worn containers, like bags, are now considered to be valid for use in the mechanics window. This means that we don't have to have everything in our character's main inventory anymore, and will save our character's backs from being broken under the weight of all those vehicle parts and the tools. Pyromaniacs rejoice! Explosives, whether they be thrown, timed, or remote detonated, can now increase your zombie kill counter as if you've killed them with your stone cold hands. While you're running away from said bombs though, be careful when sprinting into doors, as we can now trip when doing so. There's been some convenient changes to how we interact with what are known as fire tiles. These include things like campfires, wood stoves, fireplaces, and so on. Previously, we would have to do all the refueling and lighting and everything via the right-click context menu, which obviously took a little longer than it needed to. This addition was something that I noticed when I quickly nabbed an antique stove for my kitchen remodel in my latest playthrough. Wood stoves, barbecue grills, and fireplaces can now be refueled and other various things in the actual inventory window, instead of us having to right-click on them to add fuel, which is so convenient. The rest of the additions are some really nice sound effects for things like zombies clawing on surfaces. The megaphone got some new sound effects, as well as new sounds for the antique oven and various grills. Alright, with all that out the way, let's talk about game balance changes. Of course, shortly after I release my video on hunting in Build 42, they go and change it. It won't affect us too much though. Butcher's hooks need large hooks now, rabbits and other small animals can be killed using your bare hands, and leather takes 7 in-game days to dry now. Other small changes that I think are worth mentioning are increased chances to find clay near lakes, as if I haven't found enough already scattered around Muldra. And torches now give 20% more light, which is great for when the power goes out. There have been a bunch of balance changes to how fall damage works in the game. Without running the risk of going through each of the value changes individually, let's quickly summarize them. Fall damage is now more proportional to the relevant injury, and fall damage in general will hurt more now depending on how injured you already are. Broken legs and spines will, of course, cause the most shock and multiply the damage the most. Previously, if you launched yourself off of a second-story building, you would have a 100% chance to get a severe fracture, which is now reduced to 50%. The same goes for third-story buildings, which was reduced from 100% to 90%. Interestingly, before this patch, there was a chance for a fatal fall to hit the unscratched chance. What this would do is, it would completely remove all of the fall damage. They have changed it so it is still not fatal, but it will deal 5% of the total damage if it does hit the unscratched chance. And finally, the changes to zombie fall damage. If a zombie falls from the 20th floor of a building, it will now cause 95 to 99% of fatalities. So some of them may actually still get up and keep going. Falling from the 10th floor should cause about 50% of fatalities with zombies. There is a long list of fixes that were implemented, so to avoid taking too much time, we will go through some of them that stood out to me. There have been some fixes to fishing, from fixing hunger values for fish to correcting the amount of trash that we can catch at higher levels. They also fixed a bug where equipping the fishing rod while aiming at the water prevents you from actually fishing, among other small fixes. Oh, and now we can dig for worms using garden forks. Animals in general have received a lot of fixes in this patch. Some of the more notable ones include: livestock trailers no longer act as temporal batteries. Before this, they would store all of their time, so to speak, and discharge that onto the first unlucky animal that was placed inside, which aged the animal rapidly and then killed them due to old age. There were some fixes to animal attacks and a really nice fix for feeding troughs becoming non-functional when they were placed by the furniture move tool. Fixes to trapping included a fix for not being able to butcher dead rabbits that we obtained from our traps, as well as a potential animal apocalypse that could be caused by dropping trapped animals. Thankfully, there have been some general fixes to combat-related issues. Firstly, stomping on a zombie or attacking ones that we knock down too early no longer play the animation prematurely, causing us to miss the target. There was also a fix to a duplicated animation hit reaction and also to zombies previously staggering back as if they had been hit again. Shoving a zombie back with a rifle in our hands previously could crash us to the desktop, which has now been fixed as well. And lastly, they fixed unseen zombies sometimes moving way faster than they should have when tiered zombie updates were enabled. Those were some of the fixes that stood out to me, but of course there is a lot of them in the patch notes, so if you want to go through them or any of the other additions in greater detail, there will be a link to the patch notes down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video or any of my content, consider dropping a like and subscribing. As always, stay safe out there, Survivor, and I shall see you in the next one.